Welcome back to The Critique. We've got this intense transcript series today. It covers geopolitics, some pretty out-there historical theories, anti-psychiatry stuff, and, well, a lot of personal feuds, too, all from this host, Nachiketa.
Right. And our job here is basically a forensic look at the method, the rhetoric, how it all affects the piece as an exposé.
Exactly. It's ambitious material for sure, trying to expose hidden truths across global finance, mind control claims, history rewrites.
Yeah, and when you aim that high, the foundations have to be rock solid. The structure, the arguments, there's potential, definitely. But the first big hurdle is making sure it actually hits with maximum impact. Needs discipline.
Okay, so let's start there. A key theme seems to be this. The fragmentation of focus undermines analytical depth and purpose.
That's the first big opportunity, yeah? The weakness here is just severe fragmentation. It's like being tossed between completely different deep dives, sometimes minute by minute.
Uh-huh.
And that stops any single point from really landing or getting, properly analyzed.
It gives you whiplash, honestly. And the sheer intensity kind of backfires. You go from, say, analyzing the Trump trial reactions, fears about World War III, Biden giving weapons to Ukraine, serious geopolitical stuff.
Right, heavy topics.
And then, bang, you crash straight into, super esoteric numerology. Suddenly, it's all about the number 19 showing up in trade deficits or the Kabbalistic timeline.
And the listener's just left thinking, wait, which thread am I supposed to follow now? What's the actual point being made?
Exactly.
This chaotic jumping around sacrifices any chance for rigorous, sustained analysis. When you mix that kind of global forecasting with really specific, intense personal arguments, like that long-running feud over velocity versus acceleration.
Oh yeah, with Dell?
The information overload just dilutes everything. Every single claim loses some punch.
Absolutely. You barely get your head around one complex historical argument before, whoosh, it pivots again. Maybe to details about the host's job as a shipyard inspector.
Right, or suddenly making these huge claims like, Jerusalem is in Europe.
Yeah, and none of these massive topics get the space they need to actually build a case with evidence, which is, kind of essential for an exposé.
So building on that, the suggestion for improvement is pretty critical. Structure it thematically. You've got to dedicate separate, focused segments to each big subject.
Mm-hmm.
If the goal is a definitive exposé, each part needs a single, clear purpose. That shows control over the material.
Okay, so a concrete example. Maybe take that whole analysis of historical conspiracies, the Kabbalah stuff, the number 19 patterns.
Right, linking it to Gangnam Style or 9/11 or trade war lengths.
That whole deep dive needs its own chapter, its own space. It's complex enough on its own.
It really demands isolation. You just can't afford those kinds of non sequitur jumps right after it. When the host lays out this intricate numerical pattern,
Yeah?
the effect is totally killed if the very next thing is suddenly promoting this fringe therapy MACE, claiming it cures trauma super fast.
Or shifting back to internal group drama or the host's work schedule.
Exactly. That rapid, unrelated shift makes the whole thing feel scattered, not focused. It undermines the research itself.
Okay, that's a solid point on structure. Let's pivot then to how these claims are delivered. The tone, which brings us to critique number 2. The host's authoritarian and destructive rhetoric compromises the claim to objective truth-seeking.
Yeah, you can see the intent, right? To deliver hard truths. But the weakness is, the transcript is just full of defensive posturing. Projection, even, claims to be about integrity, objective reality, but then uses this really charged, derogatory language against anyone seen as an opponent.
The labels are pretty intense. They kind of swamp the actual analysis. You see shills, narcissists, morons, fucking idiot, wee-bum lickers, just repeated constantly.
Right.
It's not just sharp disagreement. It feels like an attempt to just annihilate the person, not the argument. And that immediately makes you question the host's own objectivity.
And you have to ask, is this about exposing a system, or is it more about the host needing to settle personal scores?
Yeah.
Because those long sections on the personal feuds, that obsessive back and forth with Dell about physics, the whole Duran Antarctic trip saga.
It does feel less like exposing global issues and more like public venting for an in-group, maybe.
Exactly. And that highly emotional tone creates a defensive narrative, not an objective one. It frames the host as constantly under attack.
Which directly contradicts the stated goal of a cool, fact-based exposé. The focus shifts from the evidence of corruption to the host's need for personal validation.
Okay. So the suggestion here is crucial. Adopt a consistently cold, forensic, almost documentary-style tone.
Okay.
Cut out all the personal grievances, all the name-calling. Reserve the space purely for analyzing ideas and evidence, not people's characters or intelligence. Think like investigative journalism, not a shouting match.
News to feel controlled, disciplined. Like, look at that whole technical argument about constant velocity versus acceleration.
Takes up a lot of time.
Right? And you get comments like, oh my fucking God, this is tedious. Or dismissals like, you are talking about a centrifugal. I don't buy into any of that. That just screams frustration, not analysis.
A purely forensic approach would just cut all that emotion. If the point is to prove this upper vector thing, or critique physics, then focus only on the physics. The logic. Show the data, the equations, whatever supports the claim. Calmly.
And lose the self-defensive stuff, like boasting about being taller than Dell, or that whole living rent-free in their minds line.
Right. Those moments might feel good in the heat of it, but they just project insecurity, defensiveness, the opposite of the authority needed for a powerful exposé.
Makes sense. Better credibility, better pacing too. Okay, let's dig into the actual evidence used for these big claims. Our final major point. Epistemic vulnerability and lack of empirical grounding weakens core assertions.
Right. The material makes some really radical critiques, which is fine, but the way it supports them, the methodology, seems pretty weak.
How so?
Well, the weakness is that it tries to validate these fringe systems, these huge conspiracy theories, mainly by relying on pattern recognition, analogy, anecdotes, not really demanding hard empirical proof.
Okay, like with the medical claims?
Exactly. That's a key area. You see claims that MACE, this trauma therapy method, cures symptoms inside of an hour, but it's based purely on patient stories, anecdotes.
Uh-huh.
And then that's used to make these massive leaps, like saying mental illness is not real, or that big pharma and psychiatry are totally corrupt.
So presenting personal stories as if they're definitive proof.
That's a big jump. It is. Relying on anecdote instead of, say, clinical studies puts the whole medical critique on shaky ground, especially if you're trying to give advice on mental health. For an exposé, the evidence needs to meet the standard of what you're critiquing, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
And you see that Senin pattern-based reasoning elsewhere, too. Like the claim of a one-to-one correlation between the 23 patterns of demonic voices and what's in the mainstream media.
Okay.
It's presented like it's a proven fact, not, say, a theological belief or a sociological hypothesis that needs testing. There's no method offered to actually connect those two things other than just saying, look, they match up.
So the core methodology makes the whole analysis epistemically vulnerable because it keeps confusing correlation with causation.
Precisely. Whether it's the number 19 showing up everywhere or media talking points matching these esoteric patterns, the pattern itself is presented as the proof.
Instead of external, verifiable evidence showing a real causal link.
Right. So the suggestion for improvement is clear. Anchor the analysis in empirical data, or at least in established historical or sociological methods. Any claim about medical cures, like MACE, or major historical revisions like ancient Greece didn't exist or Jerusalem is in Europe, they need supporting data, or at least a clear methodology that goes way beyond just spotting patterns.
So, concrete examples. If the goal is to critique psychiatry, instead of just saying demons cause psychosis according to 23 patterns,
you should be citing specific clinical studies, published research on side effects, failure rates, documented malpractice, something concrete.
not just relying on that one story about the patient hearing voices about the psychiatrist poisoning her.
Exactly. And likewise, for the big historical claims like Pakistan was created by the Jews, you need to provide specific sources, verifiable primary documents, even contested ones, not just tell the audience to go read the Quran themselves.
Or just point to the flower of life geometry and the numbers 19 or 33 as the sole proof.
Right. The goal is to ground the analysis in things that can actually be checked, verified.
It shifts the burden of proof back to the author, doesn't it? From just seeing patterns to actually demonstrating with evidence that those patterns cause the outcomes described.
That's the only way to really achieve the authority of a genuine exposé. You have to show your work, methodically.
This has been really insightful. We've covered narrative control, rhetoric, and the need for solid evidence.
Yeah, so to recap the main actionable steps for the listener, first, get control of the narrative. Structure it tightly. Separate segments for geopolitics, history, spiritual stuff. Make each one focused.
Second, adopt that cool forensic tone. Drop the personal attacks, the inflammatory language. That boosts credibility massively.
And finally, demand a higher standard of evidence. Move beyond patterns and anecdotes. Provide documented, verifiable proof for the big historical and medical claims. Show the methodology.
Absolutely. We strongly encourage you to take these suggestions, refine the work, and definitely submit the revised material. We'd be keen to see it for a follow-up critique.